How to get and iterate through all the actors of a world with C++ in Unreal, because even though it's something that is relatively simple to do, the syntax seems to confuse a bunch of people. So let's get to it. And there is the header file we're going to use today, and we're going to do 3 functions because I want to show you a few different examples. So I'm just going to scroll down a little bit so we can see all 3 functions at the same time, and here they are. So these are the 3 functions we're going to do today. We have first the get name of all actors. So that function is simply going to loop through all the actors that are in the world at the moment, and it's going to return us the name. So a t-array of a string right here that will contain all the names of the actors in the world, and then we'll be able to know if the function actually works by displaying the names of all the actors that are currently in the level, because we should be aware of all the actors that are in the level. So we'll be able to compare and see if we have all the actors in our little list right here. So the get names of all actors, loop through all the actors, get their names, and then as input we also have a little boolean. That boolean is going to be used as a toggle to decide which type of code we want to execute. So do we want to use the function that is already inside the GameplayStatics library, which is the function that you're probably already calling in Blueprint, so the get all actor of class function. It's inside the GameplayStatics library, and we can obviously call it in C++, and it's also going to work. So we can simply use that function, or we can also use the TActorIterator, which is the C++ version of that function. Actually, it's the same code that is already inside that function, so we're simply just recalling the same code. But when we directly use the TActorIterator ourselves, we have more control, and that's why I'm going to show you how to use it today. So this bool right here is just going to help us to compare the 2 chunks of code to see if the code that we write ourselves gives the same result as the code that is already inside the GameplayStatics library. So the boolean right here, use GameplayStatics, it's going to let us decide which type of code we want to execute. And then we have the same exact format for the second function right here, the get mesh names of all static mesh actors. That function does exactly the same thing, but instead of looping through all the actors that are in the world, it's just going to loop through all the static mesh actors that are in the world, and it's going to return us the mesh name. So the mesh used by the static mesh actor, we're gonna display its name. So not the name of the actor, but the name of its mesh. We're just going to return it right here. And same thing, we can decide if we want to use the function already inside GameplayStatics or the TActorIterator that we're going to write. So good, these are the 2 first functions that are going to loop through the actors that are in the world. But then we have a third function right here, the get names of all objects. That one is going to use a TObjectIterator and not a TActorIterator, and the difference between that is that it gives you access to all the objects that are currently inside the engine, in the editor, that are currently active in the editor, in the engine, in the game. It's going to give you access to all those objects, not only the actors, because in Blueprint, by default, you only have access to all the actors. You don't have access to all the objects. So this function right here is going to give you way more control because you'll have access to everything. And by everything, I also mean the widgets, because the widgets are simply objects, they are not actors. And what that means is when you're in game and you're calling the get all widgets of class function, it's simply doing a TObjectIterator and then filtering out all the widgets for you and returning them to you. So by default, when you're in Blueprint, Unreal only gives you access to all the widgets, not all the objects. So that function right here is going to give you way more control if you're using Blueprint in your pipeline. So get names of all the objects, that function is not going to give you all the objects, just their name, but you can easily modify that function to give you the objects directly. And since it's returning the name, right now we're simply going to return a t-array of string. Here we go. And since there's no function like that in GameplayStatics, I don't have to provide a boolean to tell me if I want to use that function because, well, it's not there. So that was it for the header file. And yes, I realize I talked a lot already, so let's jump in the CPP. And as usual, we're going to start with the includes. So the 3 includes right here. First, we have the GameplayStatics because we want to be able to call that code, so we need to be aware that the code exists. So GameplayStatics right here, then the engine utils.h to have access to the editor, which is going to give us access to the world in which we're going to iterate through the actors. So engine utils right here for our test today. And finally, we have the static mesh actor. To be able to retrieve the mesh of a static mesh actor, we need to know what the static mesh actor is, so we need to include it right here at the top. So these are the 3 includes we're going to need today, and they are all in the same module, the engine module, which is a default module, so you should not have to add it manually inside the build.cs file, but it's still a good thing to double check to make sure that you have it inside the build.cs file. So here we go, I have my engine module right here, perfect. So now I can start focusing on the function, and we're gonna start with the first one, obviously, the get names of all actors. And so what's the first step? Well, to find the actors in Unreal, you have to first go through the world, and then in that world you can find all the actors that you're looking for. That's the case for both the TActorIterator and also the function that is already inside GameplayStatics. So you need the world. So in our case, we're just going to use the world that is currently open in the editor. So in my G editor, I'm getting the world editor context, and inside that I'm taking the world, and that's going to give me the world in which we're going to search for all the actors that we're looking for. Obviously, this is just going to work in the editor because we're going through the editor to ask which world is currently open. But in your game, if you want to reuse that function, you'll be able to provide the world another way. So for example, you can use the world of any of your actors that you currently spawn in the game because the actor already knows in which world it is. So you can just ask that actor, which world are you in? Yes, oh, that one. Okay, good. I'm gonna take all the actors that are inside that world because, well, I want the same world as you. That's one option, or you can also find it any other way. So if you have a reference to your world somewhere in the game, you can simply feed that reference to the function, and the function is just going to use that world, obviously. And another way that can be done, but in the editor only this time, you can simply load the world asset using a static load object that's going to give you a pointer to that world, and then you can use that world right here instead of using the world that is currently open in the editor. So you can actually load another world without opening it and ask for all the actors that are inside that world. So that's a little bit funky, and it's actually pretty interesting. But anyway, that's not what we're going to do today. We're just going to take the current world that is currently open in the editor, and that's going to be good for us today. So I have my world right here. The second step is to, well, validate that the world is valid, obviously. So wherever the world come from, you have to make sure that it is valid. Otherwise, you cannot look inside the world to find any actors because, well, the world doesn't exist. Yeah, that just makes sense. So get the world, make sure it's valid, and now you're ready to do the logic of the function. And the first step is just going to be to define a list of names right here because we want to populate that list and return it to the user because, well, that's the purpose of the function right here. I'm just going to retrieve all the names of all my actors in my world, so I need a list to retrieve all those names. So I'm just going to leave it right here. Okay, now we have everything for real, and it's time to start working on the logic. And we have two types of logic today. We have the gameplay static logic and also the TActorIterator. We're going to start with the simpler one, so the gameplay statics, and here we go. The first step to use the gameplay statics function is to have a list of actors that is going to receive all the actors that are in the world, because that's how the function works. You have to first create the list, feed it to the function, and the function is going to populate the list for you. And talking about the function, that's the function that we have right here. So inside UGameplayStatics, you have the getAllActorOfClass, which is the same function you're probably using in Blueprint. So getAllActorOfClass, you have to provide the world in which you're looking for all the actors that you're interested in. So that's the world we define at the beginning of the function, and then the class of all the actors that you're looking for. In my case, I want all the actors, so I'm just going to provide a actor directly. So the static class of a actor, that's going to give me all the actors in the world, all of them, because all the actors that are in the world are obviously actors. Yeah, that just makes sense. And then finally, you have to provide the list that is going to be populated by the function. So I'm providing my little actor list right here at the end. Good. So the function is going to go through all the actors in the world and add them into our little list right here. So we have a list full of actors, the same way you will do in Blueprint. And now I'm just going to retrieve the names of those actors. So I'm just going to loop through that list, super simple, and then get all the names of all those actors to add them into my list of names that I define right here at the top. So names that add the get name of all the actors that are in my world. So that's how you will do it using the getAllActorOfClass function inside UGameplayStatics. It's pretty straightforward. You create a list, you call the function, and then you have all these actors and you can loop through them and do whatever you want. Super straightforward. But it's even simpler using the TActorIterator once you know how the syntax works. So I'm just going to scroll down a little bit more right here because we have a little bit more code to add at the bottom. So we're going to do the exact same thing, but using the TActorIterator instead. And here it is. So my TActorIterator, how does it work? Because if it's the first time you see that thing right here, it's a little bit weird. And actually, you don't have to think too much about it. It's just a for each loop. You can compare it to this one right here. It's a simple for each loop. Your iterator right here is your actor that is in the world, and then you're simply looping through all the actors that are in the world right away. You don't have to get the list first. The list is in there, and you're just looping through all of them, same as we're doing right here. So just see it as a for each loop and you'll be okay. So I have my little for each loop right here, which is looping through all the actors that are in my world. How do I know that it's going to be all the actors that are in the world? Well, it's because of that little actor right here. That's going to define which type of actor you're looking for, the same way we did right here at the top using the static class of a actor. In this case, we're simply going to provide the a actor directly, and that's going to give you all the actors of that class in the world. Right now, I want to have all the actors in my world, so that's why I'm providing a actor actor directly, but you'll see a little bit later that we're going to use a specific class and we're going to filter the result based on that specific class. But for now, let's focus on all the actors in the world. So TActorIterator and the class that I'm looking for, the A actor, so all the actors, and then you also have to provide the world. And you're providing it right here in the constructor of the iterator. Super straightforward, you just have to get used to it. So here I have my for each loop that is looping through all the actors in my world, and now I can simply get their name. Actually, it's not as simple as that though, because you have to retrieve the actor from the iterator. The iterator right here is simply a TActorIterator, so it's not what you want. You want the actor to be able to access all its properties, and the way you're getting the actor from the iterator is by simply adding a little star right here in the front. So from the iterator, I'm getting the actor, and once I have the actor, I can simply get its name just like that, the same way we did in the previous function. Actor, get name, and add it into the list the same way we did before. That little piece of code is exactly the same piece of code that we have right here, but we don't have to create a list and then populate the list and then loop through all the actors. You can directly loop through all the actors that you're looking for. So it's more straightforward once you know how to use it. And actually, I'm going to give you another example so we can simply complete this function right here. So I'm just going to say that it was a success and return all the names of all my actors that are in my world. Okay, that's done. Now we can take a look at the second function, and that one you'll see that it's way more straightforward to use the TActorIterator instead of the getAllActor of class. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit more to show you that. And inside the get mesh names of all static mesh actor, we're going to start the same way as the previous function because we also need a world. So I'm going to get my world that is currently open in the editor and validate to make sure that it is valid. And once I know it's valid, I'm going to create my list of names because I also want to return a list of name by the end of the function. So I'm going to create my little list right here. And once I did that, now I can start looking at the logic. So if I want to use the GamePlayStatics, we're going to do the same thing as the previous function. So create an empty list of actor that I'm then going to feed to the getAllActor of class function, which is going to populate that list of actor right here. Same as the previous function, you have to provide the world and also the class that you're looking for. In this case, we want to have access to all the static mesh actors that are in the world. Only the static mesh actor. We don't care about the skeletal mesh actor. We don't care about the point light actor. We don't care about any other type of actor. We just want the static mesh actor. So that's why right here, I'm asking the function to return me only the static mesh actors. And that means that in my list right here of actors, it's just going to contain all the static mesh actors in my world. And actually, I think you can already see one of the issues of using the getAllActor of class, because right now, even though all my actors are static mesh actors, they are going to end up inside the list of actors, generic actors. So to have access to all the properties of a static mesh actor right now, we have to recast all of our actors back to a static mesh actor. So we know that they are static mesh actor, but the code doesn't know yet. So we're going to have to tell him, and that's what we're going to do. So first we have to loop through all the actors because we want to do the same thing as the previous function and get all the names of the static mesh used by those actors. So we have to loop through all the actors, and this time we have to cast it to a static mesh actor because we want to access a property that is only available inside a static mesh actor, not a generic actor. So here I'm going to cast it to a static mesh actor. It's always going to work because that function only returns us the list of static mesh actor. Obviously, that's the purpose of the function. So my cast is always going to work, and I'm always going to have a static mesh actor right here. And once I have that static mesh actor, now I can finally add the name of his mesh inside my list. And the way I'm going to do that is inside my static mesh actor, there's a static mesh component. So I'm going to get his static mesh component. Inside the static mesh component, there's a static mesh, and then we can simply get the name of that static mesh and add it into our list. So static mesh actor, get static mesh component, get static mesh, get name. Here we go. That's how I'm gonna get the name of the static mesh used by my actor. Good. Okay, so that's done. The only issue with that little function, because it works pretty well, is that we have to cast it back to a static mesh actor to have access to all the properties of our static mesh. And it's something we don't have to do when we're using a TActorIterator instead. So that's what we're going to take a look at right now. So in my else right here, we're going to do the same thing as the previous function. We're going to use a TActorIterator this time. So TActorIterator, this time I'm feeding it the class that I'm looking for. So the A static mesh actor, same as the previous function, just have to also feed it the world, and that's going to give you an iterator looping through all the static mesh actors in your world. And hey, you can already see that it's more straightforward than the previous function because there's a lot of steps to get to that point. And my iterator right now is already a static mesh actor, so I can directly access all its properties without having to cast it back to a static mesh actor. I just have to add the little star before it, and now it is a static mesh actor. Good, already done. And then I can simply get its static mesh component, its static mesh, its name, and then add it inside our little list right here. And that's it, we're done with the function. function. So using the TActorIterator really replaced having to create a list of actors, populating the list manually just like that, and then we can loop through all those actors, but they are still actors, so we have to cast it back to a static mesh actor, and that's not very efficient. In this case, we're just looping through all the static mesh actor directly, we can take their name, and that's done. So we're simpler once you're comfortable with the syntax right here, and actually the function is done, so I'm just going to return my list of name to the user, and we'll be able to test if it actually works in the user interface later. But before we do that, we have a last little function right here, the get name of all objects. And the reason why I wanted to show you this function is first because it works the same way as the TActorIterator, but with the TObjectIterator instead, but also because I'm pretty sure that most of you don't know that you have a bunch of different objects that are not accessible to you, that are in the game, that are in the editor, that you can have access to, but Unreal is hiding them from you. And using the TObjectIterator, you can have access to all the objects that are currently spawned in your game or in the editor. And I think that's pretty cool to have access to everything, and that's what we're going to do right here. So first step is to define a list of names that we're going to return at the end of the function, because that's how I'm going to prove that it works. I'm just going to return a list of names as before. We don't need to use a world this time because the objects are not part of a world. They are part of the game, they are part of the engine, they are part of everything, but they are not specifically inside a world. So the world will not help to retrieve all those objects. It can help to filter the objects if you only want the objects that are related to your world, but in our case right now we just want to have all the objects, so I don't care about the world. So I'm just going to directly create my list of name, and then we can simply create the TObjectIterator. It's the same as the TActorIterator, but it's a TObjectIterator instead, not that big a deal. And then you can also provide the class of objects that you're looking for, because there's a lot of different objects, I mean a lot, and you probably want to filter them. In my case right now, I'm just going to use all the objects that are currently in the editor and in my game, so that's probably not something that you want to do, but I want to show you that there's a lot of objects you're probably not aware of, and I want to show you that they exist actually. But in your case, you probably want to filter them to have only the specific objects that you want. You probably want, let's say, the widgets, or maybe like the editor windows, or maybe only the color picker windows that is currently open if there's one, or maybe all the actors. Like the actors are also objects, so you can use that function to retrieve all the actors, all the blueprints, all the assets. You can filter them the way you want. But in my case, I want all the objects, everything. And then it's super simple. You just have to create your iterator. You don't have to provide a world, nothing, and that's it. Now you're iterating through all the objects of your class, and then you can do whatever you want with them. And in my case, I'm just going to retrieve the objects, same as the TActorIterator. You just have to add the little star in front of it to retrieve the real object, and then you can simply get its name, because that's what I want to do in this case. So I'm getting the name of my object, that's going to add it inside my list, that I can then return to my user and prove it that there's a lot of objects in the editor, and we're gonna see that in a second. So let's go in Unreal. And here I am in Unreal in a level that contains a bunch of random stuff. Yeah, because I want to make sure that my function works and I'm able to actually retrieve all the actors, no matter the class that the actors are using. So now I have like lights, I have static mesh, I have sounds, I have lights, I have triggers, I have all types of actors, and we're going to try to retrieve all the names of those actors using our little functions that we created today and a little user interface, obviously. So here I have a checkbox to let me know if I want to use the GameplayStatics functions or not. And then I have 3 buttons to execute our 3 functions. So the getAllActor, that is going to call the function that gets the name of all the actors. Then we have getAllStaticMesh, that is going to retrieve the name of the static meshes. And finally, the getAllObjects to retrieve the names of all the objects. And all those names are going to be written inside this little text box right here, so we can read them and see if it actually works. And we're gonna go see the graph just real quick. It's super simple. When we click on getAllActor, it's calling the get names of all actor, getAllMesh, getAllMesh, and finally getAllObject, getAllObjects. We're also providing the check state of the checkbox to decide if we want to use the GameplayStatics function or not. And as output, the functions are going to return us an array of string that we're going to combine together and display them inside the user interface. As simple as that. And we're doing that for all 3 functions, obviously. So let's go see if it works. I'm going to open my user interface right here, and we're going to start by the GameplayStatics, because that function should actually work. So we're just going to test it and see if it works. If I get all actors, it should display all the same actors that I have right here on the right. And now I'm realizing that I'm displaying the name of the actor, not the display name of the actor. There's 2 different names associated per actor. The one that is pretty and written in the user interface right here, so cone, but behind the scene, it's using a name, a unique name for that actor, and that's probably probably one of those right here. I have 4 static mesh actor in my level, and the cone is probably one of them right here. So the name is not pretty because I'm not getting the display name of the actor, I'm just getting its raw name. So that's a name that we're going to display in the user interface. But all the same actors that are in my user interface right here in Unreal, in my world outliner, should be found right here in the user interface because, well, that's getting all those actors. And then I'm also going to test if it works without the gameplay statics, so with the TActorIterator instead. So get all actors. Oh, the list didn't change, so I guess it worked. Check the checkbox, get all actor, it's the same list. I uncheck the checkbox, get all actors. So we're sure that the logic is the same, and actually just make sure that the result is the same, and not just because the function wasn't called. I'm just going to call another function to refresh my user interface, and then I can get all actor, and yes, I'm back with the same list. So the function actually worked, and it gave the exact same result, either if I'm using the gameplay statics version or the TActorIterator. So perfect, that's exactly what we wanted. And then we can do the same thing with the get all static mesh. I'm just going to run that one, why not? It's going to give me the mesh names of all my static meshes in my level. In my level, I only have 4 static mesh actors, so I have all those 4 right here. So the cube, the sphere, the cone, and the cylinder. And these are the names of the static meshes used by those actors. And yeah, it seems to work. I'm gonna uncheck that checkbox to make sure that the list is the same, and the list is exactly the same. So both the TActorIterator and also the gameplay statics function are giving the same result, and that's exactly what we want. Perfect. The last thing we have to test today is the get all object, and I'm just going to check that one. And yeah, now I have a long list right here, and I have a really really long list because there's a lot of objects in the editor. If you use that in your package game, it's not going to be as many objects, obviously, because you only have the objects that are part of your game. But if you're using that in the editor, you're going to have everything. Yeah. I have the panels of all the widgets used in the editor. I have some stuff from Niagara right here. I have horizontal box, more horizontal box, more functions. Oh, blueprint nodes. Okay, so these are the blueprint nodes that are called probably in my graph right there in the back. And then I have a few material expression. Maybe these are the material expression used by all the meshes and things that are active in the editor at the moment, or maybe just all the material expression. Actually, I don't know. More material expression. Yeah, it's probably all the material expression in the editor. Then I have all the UV nodes, all the blueprints node for converting the maths. Okay, yeah. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff in the editor that you're not aware that it actually exists, and they are actually proper objects that are spawned and created in the editor. So with that function, you have access to everything, and you probably want to filter them actually, because yeah, that's a lot of stuff in there. But anyway, if you're using that in your package game, it's gonna give a way better result, obviously. Anyway, all that to say, that's gonna be it for today's video, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye bye.